Ray and Rosa Hicks, the last of the old-time storytellers. High up in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, in an area known as the backcountry, Ray and Rosa Hicks live a simple life. But they aren't simple people. Ray is the patriarch of American storytellers. He has received honors from President Reagan and the Smithsonian Institution. He is renowned for telling jack tales, episodic narratives that were brought to America by immigrants from the British Isles, and which are at the heart of a storytelling renaissance. But the Hicks' story is better than any jack tale.
Well, you're the last storyteller.
Huh?
You're the last storyteller.
I'm the last storyteller, tell them right.
Ray and Rosa are important because they are like time capsules or encyclopedias of Appalachian folk culture. They've lived their lives sharing oral traditions of mountain people, and it's their whole culture, it's their way of life.
The celebration of Ray Hicks is absolutely caught up in the romance of the mountains.
There never was an awful lot of money on Beech Mountain. People were self-sufficient, and they had to learn to be self-sufficient. They had to do for themselves, and they learned how to do that from their parents and neighbors. So there's this element of sharing on Beech Mountain, like there is in any folk culture. Outsiders might think of that as somehow backward, but it's not in the least. It's I think if people think about it and study it, it's a wonderful way of life.
Short life in trouble, few more words we part. Short life in trouble, dear girl, poor boy with a broken heart. Now you know what you promised, not more than a week ago. You promised that you'd marry me, standing in your mama's door. Says now you broke your promise. Go marry whoever you may. This old world so big, so wide, I'll ramble back someday.
Somehow Ray is almost like a mountain speaking. You know, there's something so powerful, so elemental, so just Ray there. So that he is the same on that bench as he is in a tent with 1,000 people. And there's something so wonderfully encouraging about that, that you can be yourself. I heard a storyteller once saying, Ray Hicks is the last man that can be himself on this earth.
And I have to put my teeth in now to play the harp. And so I just like I am at home, I don't try to hide nothing. It's just nature.
There was a man sitting next to me who was taking notes. And he was taking notes, and my wife says, "Why are you taking notes?" He says, "I'm listening to an institution." And he says, "I don't want to miss anything that he's saying because when he leaves, it will be the end of it."
I had to go to London and to fetch me a wife.
If you define sophistication as someone who's at home in their own culture, he is the most sophisticated man I have ever met.
Millions of people around the world have heard Ray or have heard about Ray, and it's a huge gift that he's given us. And I think if any of us could have just a little bitty taste of the generosity that he has in his heart, our world would be very different.
And so I followed him around listening, and each time I heard him, it got better and better until the point where I could just sit there and just relax, close my eyes, and I could be there with him.
All people have always listened to and told stories, and it blurs those lines between us. It reminds us that we are all the same.
Long about midnight, when I get so doggone blue, I'd give this world and half of my life if I was only married to you. Short life in trouble.
You know, sometimes we think of hard times if the electricity goes off for an hour or two. And Ray, you know, had to walk through the snow a lot of times without shoes, and he had not any food for a while, for long periods of time. And he started working when he was, you know, just a young boy to help the family out. He had really hard times, and instead of that turning him away from people, or turning him to a bitter side, instead it opened him up.
Hi to everybody.
If you went through a list of characteristics of mountain people and include traditionalism and fundamentalism, resourcefulness would be right at the top of the list.
Well, I worked through the winter, worked through the spring, planted my corn and taters, then it wouldn't rain. There ain't a thing.
Rosa knows about the domestic traditions that keep a family going.
And back then we didn't put nothing in it no more for your cornbread. Anymore I put a little margarine in it. Sometimes I put some mayonnaise.
You know, when you speak about storytelling and talk about it as performance, if one thinks of performance as everyday artistry, as something where you presume the presence of an audience, but that audience might be at the other side of your kitchen table, and the audience is not an audience that is coming to hear you tell stories as much as an audience of friends and community members who recognize you as someone who's got a gift.
Come on to eat, and Ray and Ted.
This is about greasing the gears of everyday life, making the everyday sparkle.
Come on, come on. What's wrong with you? You stuck to your chair?
Hush up, honey, now don't you cry.
It was about appreciating those in your midst who were the artists. And it could be a storyteller, or it could be a cook.
Reach the beets over here, Teddy.
I need some margarine in this salad. Just leave a fork in it.
Yeah, I stayed with the bears back there in the beach peeling that wild cherry bark to make a levy.
The Hickses live the way they do because they want to keep what they have. Indoor plumbing would raise their property taxes. Electric heat would cost them even more. Every morning, Rosa brings in water from the spring house to use throughout the long day. Washing up without running water presents no problem.
I never will marry, nor be no man's wife. I expect to live single all the days of my life. My love's gone and left me, the one I adore. He's gone where I shall never more see him no more. On turf our body, in the water so deep, she closed her blue eyes forever to sleep. When my love's gone and left me, the one I adore, he's gone where I shall never more see him no more.
Although Ray is a star wherever storytelling prospers, he seldom profits as much from his talent as his younger, more accessible competitors do. His presentation is unique, archaic in style, treasured by some, devalued by others. Rosa hauls still more water from the spring house for canning and storing food for the hard winter ahead.
Then you've got to hang them up behind the stove.
Like generations before them, the Hickses, Ray, Rosa, and Ted, the youngest son, make do. Hardly anything goes to waste.
But my old hen, she won't do. She lays eggs and taters too.
And supposed to went to California before he retired and was beside of Johnny Carr on stage with it. On stage I was supposed to, and I couldn't make it. California.
Next time she'll cackle in the pod.
Yeah, it was swimming on top. 2.5, 3. That's 3.5. We're not getting too full.
You'll find some folk artists who claim to do it exactly like my grandfather did it. But more often than not, they'll insert things from their own experiences and their own aesthetic system to make it a better story.
Young ones, I've walked in the woods now with the school young, teaching them. These years where I went at, said, Mr. Hicks, we need you. Said, it's coming a time back. That's what they've been telling me, that this might be needed to survive in the United States.
You believe that?
Yeah.
What makes you believe that?
Makes me believe it because what I've lived in. I've been in there with Mama crying like in the Jack Tale stories I entertain, with her crying not about in this house.
And so Ray projects the hardships of his own life into his tales about Jack.
He was young, and Mama was a-crying. God, crying, she was going to starve to death. And Jack, he was some way like I've been in my life. She said, Mama, of the old saying, it's always a way. Will, if you got a will, it's a way. Will, it's a way. Don't give up if you got the willpower. Will, it's a way. And he said, maybe let me go. She said, you too young to get out on your own, to try to hunt anything to do. Well, he said, but Dad, Mama, we've got to try. Well, now some, it's hard to make them believe that. They say he's just making that up. Said God Hicks can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's true. Yeah, from my right in here. And so Jack worked. He couldn't get all that wood, he was so weak and young, but he cared for the old mud rock fireplace of the firewood. And next morning, he left at daylight, or a little before day, and he got in the woods, big forest, nobody too much near.
Someone like Ray Hicks, though Ray Hicks is celebrated as a storyteller, and he's celebrated for his mastery of the Jack Tale, he's much more than that. A good talker is the one who carries words as tools of artistry. And Ray is that.
The story's told about Ray once that he was on Beech Mountain, and you know how high that is up in the mountains. Was driving a truck in a snowstorm, and his truck went off the side of a mountain and went down a few hundred feet before it lodged against a tree, and Ray was thrown out and was banged up pretty bad, and it was much snow and it was still coming. He was a few miles from home, but he knew to survive he had to get home, and he dragged himself back home, and turns out that he had a broken neck.
When I think about his life and growing up, he and Rosa both had really hard times.
I love his style because underneath it is this sense of life that is so powerful, a sense of integrity, a sense of laughter. It is so moving to hear Ray tell a jack tale and slap his leg, because he's heard the story 1,000 times and told it, but he's moved. It's underneath, his life has been hard, and he knows these are real. These stories are real, and they talk about hardness in a way.
Yeah, Jack never gives up. That's one of his traits. Jack is persistent and determined.
Ray can even find humor in his and in Jack's hardships.
Said, I don't want to think of that grist mill. Said, I've hired around 50 men that stayed in the grist mill in the bunk. 50 men, and each one of them was dead next morning. And said, I shut it down. I shut the mill down and said, I've buried men until I've got tired of it. And so I hope dig the last grave. They used to have to dig them 6 feet deep with a homemade coffin and dig a vault and then lay boards over it, over the corpse. And 6 feet deep, and now you can get by with 3 if you hit a rock.
Ray and Rosa, I think, in many ways are typical of Appalachian mountain people throughout the Appalachian plain, throughout the range.
Like many Appalachian people, much of Ray's knowledge about nature comes from his Indian background. His great-grandmother, Alice Trivett, was Cherokee.
I grew up in the woods, forest, had 2 to live. Started in it at 6 years old to get my shoes and clothes.
Ray knows about plants and herbs and how they can heal.
Right here now is spigonard, kidney medicine. Right here. Horse mint's my name, my old name. And the new name is bee-balm. Bee-balm. It's a mint in there. Good. Good for your stomach to make a tea on it, taste good. That's lobelia. The new name is silverbird or white mahogany, and we called it white bird. Right in there could be foxfire when you split it open, and that really lights a fire. This do. I clean it this way before I put it in my stick. That's a trillium right there. That's a painted tree, young one right there. Mountain service. Services. Bears eats them. This is a new name is jewelweed in the flower book. Well, the old name is touch me not. This wild cherry bark right there is. You all want to taste? Here, take him to taste that. And they said that if you didn't kill, put them all sleeping and never wake up. I'd go. Well, I said, I'll chew it and let's just go to sleep together. This is good for your blood and a lot of other, and your strength and appetite's the main thing, make you eat. And some said they didn't want that, didn't have nothing to eat no how. Said they didn't want that. Said they wanted the rations, and they didn't want nothing to make them eat a lot. Our Blue Ridge Mountain has got more of the medicine for us to use than any other place. In the Blue Ridge Mountain.
I didn't know that.
And see, here's a song that I like. I'm going across the Blue Ridge Mountain. I'm going across the Blue Ridge Mountain. I'm going across the Blue Ridge Mountain. Never expect to see you anymore. Oh, how can I keep from crying? How can I keep from crying? How can I keep from crying? When I never expect to see you again, one another again, you could say. Yeah,
that's pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, right there is a young hoo-wah with somebody with a bloom on it. Smells a little like a skunk. And somebody smelled of it and said, hoo-wah! And that started the name hoo-wah, to know it apart. Yeah, hoo-wah! Hoo-wee!
Rosa knows about plants and herbs and what they can be used for and how they can be used to cure and heal folks.
Well, this is sassafras, and you get your little limb, tender limb, and get right in the center of it, and that little white stuff right in the center, you get it out. They call it the pith. And this is what we use to wash our eye, something get in it, or it's a bothering. And people said, oh, nothing like that. Well, old people live by their, if you call it superstitious. So I think it worked for them. Why couldn't it work for us? Yeah, I can give Ray some. He probably like that some in his eye.
She's a master gardener.
Well, when me and Ray's married, Grandma Hicks had rhubarb. Then we saved the seed and we sowed the seed back, and this year, I don't know how many years this year been here.
And knows all the botanical lore.
Ever since I remember, Mom always give us a place in her garden.
The two families that settled here years ago were the Harmons from Germany and the Hickses from England. Apparently it was Samuel Hicks, they call him Big Sammy, that brought these tales from England. Although it's almost certain that the Harmons knew the tales too, because they came from an area in Germany where the Grimm brothers, Jakob and Wilhelm, collected folk tales that we know now from their famous book, Children's and Household Folk Tales. Most people know the stories and the songs and the beliefs and the rituals. They just don't happen to be what folklorists and anthropologists call active bearers of tradition. It's like joke tellers. Well, Ray and Council Harmon and Big Samuel Hicks were active bearers of tradition. They were performers. They were good at it. Rosa, for example, could sit for hours and hours and hours, which she has done, and listen to her husband tell them. She's always fascinated.
And said she hollered, hip-hoo, Lordy mercy.
People say that folks on Beech Mountain are slow to warm to outsiders. But New Yorkers Ann and Frank Warner and their two sons bonded quickly when they visited the Hickses in 1939. They took back with them rugs made by Ray's mother, Rena, dulcimers crafted by Ray's father, Nathan, and songs, including Tom Dooley, which was sung by the Hickses' cousin, Frank Prophet.
Hang your head, Tom Dooley, now you're bound to die.
Items that were much in demand far away in the urban north, and eventually all over the world. But the market didn't hold. World War II meant rationing and even harder times than usual for the Hickses. Ray was drafted into the Army, but he was finally rejected because his arm had been broken, cranking a Model T Ford.
My hand just fell down here, and I come off the hill of hollering to Mama, God, I'm burnt.
In 1945, broke and despondent, Ray's father, Nathan Hicks, committed suicide.
He took his life. I seen him hanging.
I was strolling one day in a lonely graveyard when a voice from the tomb seemed to say, I once lived as you lived, walked and talked as you talked, but on earth I was soon called away.
I've nearly took my life 3 times. God won't let you take your life. Let the devil take it if he don't allow it. If it's something here he's got you to do to help people. Now them that does that ain't got nothing here to feel to live for again. No more. It's in the darkest dungeon.
Oh, those tombs, lonely tombs, seem to say in a lonely gentle tone.
Ray's mother died in 1975, leaving him the family property and all its responsibilities.
And when I came to the place where my mother was laid, and in silence I stood by her tomb, when a voice seemed to say in a lonely gentle tone, I am safe with my Savior at home. Oh, those tombs, lonely tombs, seem to say in a lonely
Ray became head of the family.
Oh, how sweet is the rest in the beautiful heavenly home.
But grim times had their bright moments too. Ray, who believes in many things magical, has been well served at least twice by fortune tellers. Once when he was told that he would meet and marry Rosa.
Just to put it short, the way I found Rosa is a long story, true story.
And again when he began to entertain the public with his stories.
And a fortune teller, a woman back down yonder, told my fortune. And she said, young man, you've seen it hard now, but said when you get in your 40s, you'll hit something. And it come to all this started.
I think if you looked through the mountains, they had talkers. They weren't storytellers. You know, they weren't narrators. They were just talkers. They were good talkers who you could go to and trust that you could hear something unfold that was going to cause enjoyment. And they might tell them sitting in front of the local store. They might tell them, you know, at whatever gathering place there was, be it where you go and bring your furs or where you sell your herbs. Those are the kind of places where these people would hold court in a very informal way. They would be there, they would be recognized, they would be appreciated. It wouldn't be seen as performance.
Ray has always been a talker, but he began telling stories publicly in the early 1960s at a nearby elementary school.
When I first performed for really for money was a $10 to Lima Creek Holly.
So on Sunday afternoon at the first Storytelling Festival, which was 26 years ago, and they introduced Ray and this huge giant of a man, you know, all 6'7" of him, stood up on that stage. He was as stiff as a board, and that microphone coming up, and I was thinking, you know, what is this now? Is this right to bring somebody out of the mountains and put them behind this machinery, you know, and have them tell stories in this way? But as soon as he started his story, everything just melted all around him. And all of a sudden he just kind of became the mountains, he became Jack himself.
I was fortunate the first time Ray came here, we had no idea who he was other than the fact he's Ray Hicks. I'm talking about Jonesboro. He got paid for the total weekend $75. And I know we all felt good, because what we said was we've helped him pay his land taxes.
And was in all it trying to get the land, and I says, God, if God gives me strength, they ain't gonna get this property.
To keep the land, you have to pay the property taxes on it. So our feeling about the storytelling at the end of it, when we were sort of sitting around with our shoes kicked off, was this is good because it helps people pay property taxes.
What happened with, in this century, in the sort of the last decades of the last century, and then through this century, with the outsider interest in things Appalachian, and the attempt to use the mountains as a symbol of something else, as a symbol either of the American past and tradition, as a symbol of that which needs to be pulled up to join the rest of civilization. However that was framed, forces came in that brought with them all kinds of power, and they carry with them not only prestige, but more importantly money and resources. And those resources, those enter into this equation, and they change things.
Nowhere is change more evident in Appalachia than in the multitude of festivals that are held throughout the mountains. The National Storytelling Festival at Jonesboro, Tennessee, has been a highlight of the Hicks' year since 1972. They prepare day in and day out for festival appearances. But the day before going to Jonesboro is crucial as they gather up their goods to sell there. Dried apples, carefully packaged. Ginseng for what ails you. Hand-carved wooden toys and doll houses for the young at heart. And bird houses for the spirit that sings.
Know a lot of them asked me, and will this time if I live to get there, Mr. Hicks, what story you gonna tell? Well, I say, I just tell the one that hits me when I speak to my people when I hit the mic.
On the wild stormy deep, with Jesus all sweet, and hold to his loving hand, in a home above, I'll be there with God, and rejoice in a happy land.
The night before, an unquiet sleep.
Yeah, I feel rugged. That's what hurts me. I don't rest. Hurts so bad, but I can't rest.
I want to put them. Well, we'll leave you nothing to eat.
These birdhouses go here, right?
Made for 3 days. Need to brought the truck down here. I hit down hungry.
Huh? What not? No. Let's see, there's them little box. I forgot to see.
I've got work to do. We'll hit.
Each October, they faithfully make the pilgrimage through the hills.
Going across the mountain, oh, fare you well. I'm a-going across the mountain, you can hear my banjo tell. Got my rations on my back, powder is dry. Going across the mountain, oh, Chrissy, don't you cry. Go across the mountain, oh, fare you well. Go across the mountain, you can hear my banjo tell.
Well, you want to stay here till hunt them up?
No, I'll walk those days.
Here we are! Here we are! Here we are!
Got with us.
Okay.
Wasn't raised up.
Is that the dancing dog?
Yeah. We put bowl in the chair.
Okay, because my granddaddy had one of those.
Forward weed.
Little
Yeah, I used,
that's
I
it.
used to date Black King.
See that guy with.
I don't know, must be from down here.
Let
me get my pen. Here it is. There it is. So Virginia.
Do.
Whenever you have outside forces that move into a community will respond, will change. Culture is always dynamic, it's always changing, so there's nothing unnatural about that. The social reformers who moved into the mountains, one of the things they did was valorize, foreground certain arts that they saw as truly representative of the Appalachian people.
America is a nation of outside influences. Whatever comes into the mountains soon becomes distinctly Southern.
Ray Hicks is in the house. If you want to hear about Ray's life, one of the ways is just to take in his stories. Every word, it's like mythic language. It takes us deeper into who he is and into who we are. And that language takes us up too. Sometimes I feel like I'm in heaven when I'm with Ray Hicks. For some folks that have not heard Ray before, I don't know if you know this, Ray, but some people say that you have an accent. If you don't quite catch some of the words, don't worry about it. On the inside, we're breathing the same air that Ray's ancestors and that all of our ancestors breathed. The same cells make up us. So somewhere in your body, you're going to understand every single word. So just let it come in.
Them rabbits got away and they look a little like a mule. He come back and said, son, said you keep them mule eggs, said if they run that fast, that little like them do that little to get grown.
That's the first thing that happens is I get to hear my daddy's dialect and all these old men's dialect of these mountains in the form of Ray Hicks. And I think he's so special, but then again, he's every old daddy and granddaddy around in these hills. But for the people that aren't familiar with our tongue, he's enchanting in that he's reaching across the ages. He's something old that they can touch and listen to and real, something that was never in a book.
I think it's a reminder to us who are storytellers who sort of do it in a way that he doesn't do it. I think Ray does it because it's a part of his life. It's like living, it's like breathing for him. It's not as much of a ritual as we sort of make it. So I think what he does is he brings us back to ground zero and allows us to realize that storytelling is, after all, of the people and should be for the people and should be about just normal folk.
The death of me, oh Lord. This hammer be the death of me.
I made a conscientious effort to see him today because there are a lot of tellers I wanted to see, but he was the one I had to see. He's a national treasure. The Smithsonian called him a legendary icon. He is the man in storytelling.
Rosa's a good, sweet thing. If you've seen her, you know how sweet she is. She's a perfect mate for him. She's a perfect booster for him. She's keeping him going. He's keeping her going.
I'm sure you've had a good time, haven't you? Yeah. Take it away, Ray.
Back home, after the frenzy of Jonesboro, the Hickses return once again to their routine tasks.
I believe it was the best it's been since it started. You can feel the spirit. You can feel it better than a lot of churches. Some spoke to me that had never seen my picture. Said, we come special to meet you, Mr. Hicks. Yeah. Yeah, some's that way every year.
People come to the Hickses more than they go to people. English reporter Martin Kettle described Ray as the last mountain man.
John Glenn, he's living now.
He's going to go up again.
Yeah.
He's going to go up again at 75.
Oh.
The oldest man in
God.
space.
Yeah.
He's going in about October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's going again.
He's going again. The only man to go up in his 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, I hadn't heard that.
No,
and he's healthy enough to go again.
Well, they think so. He's spending all this time having these
tests.
tests.
What would his age be?
Well, I think it's about your age.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, I think so.
About my age. Yeah.
So.
Well, now he
So
must.
you could go to the moon if you wanted.
Yeah, he must eat the right stuff.
Oh, Reuben made a wreck. Kill my darling, I expect. Lord, I'll never make a living this way. Oh, them chickens on my back and them bloodhounds on my track. Lord,
the Hickses' home is never quiet for long.
If the boiler don't bust,
they are celebrated for the simplest thing on earth, for being themselves.
We'll all soon be a long ways from home.
That's right. My time.
I think Ms. Hicks represents a whole world of song up there. There's a lot of there's always been a women's arena of song in the mountains. I think a kind of performance that was by and large constrained by social norms. It wasn't as public. It was a performance that found its public voice in the church, but found its private voice in the home, in the yard, in everyday situations.
But this is a song we sung when we at the prayer meeting that had in homes when they started breaking up, shaking hands. And this is a song that I remember the old people singing. The morning star. The morning star is a-rising, yes, the morning star is a-rising, for day is a-breaking in my soul, and I feel my soul rejoicing.
You hear a lot of stories about that tradition, and it seems to me that Ms. Hicks fits in that tradition. She's one of those women who were these bearers of tradition, of an older tradition that was, in many cases, I think, passed on through women.
The morning star is a-rising, for day is a-breaking in my soul, and I feel my soul rejoicing.
Old Christmas, traditionally celebrated in the mountains on January 6th, represents yet another attempt to hold on to the pioneer heritage of Appalachia.
People come from all over to it because I am finding that in the United States that people are searching for a rock to hold them, to give them some stability, and this is just one of them. There's many others, but this is one of them.
And so we hung our stockings up beside the fireplace. Next morning I wasn't about 5 or maybe going on 6 years old. And we slept upstairs and come down. And what had happened, it snowed up so drill till they couldn't get the heating to get no Christmas, but they kept it hid from, shy. And I was a crying, and I can feel him now. And me at 76 years old, I was a crying, and nothing in my stockings, nothing in none of the other children, my brothers and sisters, not a thing. And Mama says, Ray, don't cry. Said Sandy got froze to death in North Pole, reindeers and all. And I can see him now on the sleigh. I could see him there on the sleigh dead, and the reindeer's dead. And she said, besides that, they don't hatch out many Santa Claus. They just a few.
You are dismissed to go wassail.
The way I feel with it, with what I know, he's using me ahead. I was one of his, like you spoke it there, predestination one. Right. No doubt. I was one of. Devil jumped off between my backs there. One night I was walking in with a single. Mm-hmm. And I could feel him between my shoulders. He spoke with a voice. He said, Ray, you've got to take your life. And I fell on my knees in the little old road, and I'd go, oh, I don't want to die now. And that is tough, and I can't take my life. Mm-hmm. I went with God. Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. And when that light come, made me feel, and a voice spoke, said, Ray, hold on, your times are coming. Well, here is Williams now, Ewan, a Camry.
Here we are, that's right.
Said, your times are coming, they're coming out of it. Well, I told God I didn't want all the wretchedness that people maybe some have. I just give me a little what they've got and I'll be satisfied.
Well, I'm riding on that new river train. I'm riding on that new river train.
The Hickses have a special way with young people. In this case, a group of high school students from nearby Shelby, North Carolina, visited the Hickses on the occasion of their 50th wedding anniversary. But what the students really found in these hills, only an hour's drive from their suburban school, was a sense of their own values, all strictly homespun.
That new river train, toot toot toot. Riding on that new river train.
Ray and Rosa, I mean, their love story is just, just great. It was different because a group of teenagers became interested in these old people up on a mountain. We learned a lot about each other through Ray and Rosa and their story.
Same old train that brought me here is going to carry me away.
When you saw no electricity, no running water, and etc., those things aren't really needed.
Yes, go ahead, you carry me away.
We spend a lot of our life on the internet in the fast lane, eating a McRib on the run. When you step back into nature, you see just how peaceful and calm and how wonderful life can just be.
You know, they haven't read all the classics. So what do they know? What is in their heads and their culture? It's what Jack would do. It's more than just a fictional story. They're kind of like scriptures, valuable lessons for life, how to behave, how to live, how to treat other people, how to respond to problems and different things that come your way.
God told Hezekiah, it's a message from on high. You better get your house in order, or you will surely die. He turned his face against the wall, he prayed and he cried. He got his house in order, God spared him 15 years. There's a little black train is a-coming, better set our business right. That little black train is a-coming, and he might be here tonight.
Now we people, they claim they ain't no kin, but now we've kin to all nationalities regardless of race or tongue. I caught that a few years ago. You can make heaven here, you can make hell. Study with me now. We ain't married one that's here now. Go live right on, whatever you do. What would happen if nothing didn't deceive? Wouldn't be no topsoil to grow nothing to eat. There ain't nothing never died yet. It just has to die to go back through the planet. I caught that on my own. Way back in the hills is a boy I once wondered. Very deep in the grave lies the one that I love. She's called from this earth a jewel in heaven. She'll brighten the kingdom around God's great throne. May the angels have peace, God bless her in heaven. They broken my heart and they left me to roam. This earth holds its wealth of diamonds and silver and gold, but it cannot hold one precious soul. No jewel on earth, but a jewel in heaven. She'll brighten the kingdom around God's great throne. May the angels have peace, God bless her in heaven. They broken my heart and they left me to roam. And then you go back, way back in the hills is a boy I once wondered. Very deep in the grave lies the one that I love. She is called from this earth a jewel in heaven. She'll brighten the kingdom around God's great throne. gone. May the angels have peace, God bless her in heaven. They broken my heart and they left me too wrong.
That's beautiful.